Alright, so to continue on with this idea of context and being able to identify the differences in context in real world scenarios, what I have here is a screenshot that a guy sent me. It provides an excellent example because he was asking me a question that I get asked very, very frequently by people who are trying to understand the market profile and what you do and do not do in certain areas. So what he had done is he sent me the screenshot, and right here he circled 131.05 and '04 in the 30 year. His layout's the same as mine, so he has a 10 year, the 30 year, and the 5 year. And he said, okay, well, there's a step in the profile, right, from 13,500 to 7,500. And the market is hitting into that there at '04. Would this be a sign to go short? And actually, they're trading '03s right here. Because he's viewing this as a step from 13 to 7,000. The problem is that he's viewing it incorrectly, really. And not necessarily that the market won't go down from there, but that philosophy is incorrect from the sense that, A, that's not really a step in the profile. I mean, yeah, there's a difference of 6,000 contracts there, but the problem here is that he's still very much within the range. I mean, you've had 7,000 at 8, 15,000, 14,000, 13,000. Okay, yeah, it breaks a 7, but then it goes right back up to 9, 8, 10,000, 7,000, 9,000. So there's really been plenty of volume at all these prices. It's not a step in the profile that's necessarily going to create any kind of a puke out. And so the thing that I always talk about in these videos is your ideal setup is an area where you have heavy hitters trying to create a move. You have new money from smaller or medium-sized traders trying to jump on board that move. So basically, for example, if you're in the 10-year, you have guys who trade 3, 4, 5,000 at a clip. They're trying to create a move. They're trying to defend their positions and then press the market in their favor. You have smaller traders that trade anywhere from one lot to 100, 200, 500, trying to jump on board that move and hopefully take advantage of it. And then you would have, ideally, an area where everybody who's on the wrong side is puking out. So, for example, the market is approaching 7.5, 7. You would have big players selling into this, selling 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 contracts. They're all trying to press the market down. You have smaller traders selling 50, 100, 20, 10, trying to join that move. And then what you're going to have is, hopefully, if it snaps through 6 and 5, 5 right here, you would also have all the long players bailing out at 5, 4.5, 4. So not just your 10 lot and 20 lot traders and 100 lot traders bailing out, but you would also have guys who are long 3, 4,000. They're going to be puking out there as well. So you have all three scenarios working in your favor. That's the ideal optimum setup, right? And so what you would see there is a true step in the profile. Now, it just happens to be that the step in the profile is near the low of the day. But you have a really big step from 17,900 to 4,800 to 220 to the low of the day. That's what you're looking for when you're looking for a step in the profile. And it doesn't have to be at the low of the day. I mean, this might have been a range. You know, there may be a range at some point during a day where maybe, for example, this is 44,000 to 37,000, in this range here between 10 and 12.5. And then from that 44,000, it drops down to 24,000 like you see, but then from 24,000, it goes to 8,000, and then 6,000, and then 4,000. And then maybe early in the day, the market was down here, so you had a valley, and now the market range, and now it's snapping out of that. So yeah, if you have a step from 44,000, 24,000 to 8,000, and you had over here a step from 13 to 7 to 5 to 2,000, and they were matching up together, then yes, you're in an area where now you might want to try a short trade for a breakout in that type of area with that kind of price action. But as we see right here, what you really have is you're still just in the middle of a big range. All these markets are in a range, and yes, even though there's a break from 44,000 to 24,000, it's still 17.9, 23, 22. It doesn't trail off. That's what you kind of want to see. You want to see it trail off into smaller and smaller numbers, because that provides more of an area where you're likely to get more guys trying to press it, and more newer traders coming on board to try and jump on board that move. Right here, it's just most likely going to be a battle back and forth, a continued battle back and forth, and not much is going to take place in that area. And so this also goes to the idea of a divergence between these three markets. This is obviously specific to treasuries, but you'll see it in any markets that are related. So the Bun Bobble Shats, or maybe if you're trading even different types of oil, you have to compare the products and see where they stand relative to one another. So you'll see the 30-year, for example, is only a few ticks off the high, 3, 4, 5 ticks off the high here, whereas a 10-year is quite a bit more off the high. It's about 10 ticks off the high. And then the 5-year is the same. It's way off its high. So let's say you were looking to go the other way. You want to play a breakout to the upside in the 30-year. Even if the 30-year gets to the high, the 10-year and the 5-year would be lagging. They would probably be nowhere near their high of the day. And so it doesn't mean that you shouldn't necessarily go long, but if you do go long, you have to be careful, because you have to realize that all three markets aren't lined up. And so I will show you an alternative to that. I'll show you a similar setup in real time that I caught to demonstrate this. Okay, so I managed to capture this on a recording. What you see here is, again, the 10-year, the 30-year, and the 5-year, and then I actually had the S&P up over here on the far right-hand side. But what you'll notice is that the 30-year is only 3 ticks off the high. And now if you want to talk about a real step, once again, here we go. You have 11,597 at 11, all the way to 2,700 at 12, to 652, to only 21 contracts at 14, right? So the 30-year is only 3 ticks off the high, but the 10-year is way off the high. The high is up here, and the 5-year was also way off the high. The high was far beyond where we can see right now. And so the market looked like it may be pressing a little bit higher, but I was very leery to take any kind of a long trade here, and in fact was looking for some kind of a fade trade, because they weren't lined up. Now, if all three markets had been 3 ticks off their high, then yeah, I would have been looking to go the other direction with that. And because you're looking for all of them to move together in unison. And if they're moving in unison together, it's more likely that bigger traders will come on board and try to continue that move. But when you only have one market near the high and the other ones are still in the middle of their daily range, it's going to be harder to create a follow-through on that. So again, we're just going back to context here. You can't just say, okay, there's a step from 11 to 12, and the 30 years near the high, I'm going to go long if it breaks the high at 13 or 14. You might want to take a trade like that. It depends on the circumstance, but you have to keep in mind, okay, this trade is probably not as optimum as if the 10-year and the 5-year were also only 3 ticks off their high. So even if I get long here, I'm probably going to need to monitor it very closely, and if it shows any signs of not going farther, I'll need to take my small profit. Yeah, it might carry on higher. That's great, but just go into it knowing that you're already in a situation where you may not get much follow-through. So what ended up happening here is that the market did begin to move higher, and I'm just going to scroll through it for you rather than let it play out. Right here you see they go ahead and they buy 12s. Comes back on 12 a little bit. So right there, they go 4.5 bid over here in the 10-year. They're bidding up 12. They're going to start to print in the 13s here. The 5-year is coming along for the ride. And then right there, they go ahead and buy it. So this is what I mean. So your profile is sustaining. They're taking highs in the 30-year, and yet you have to watch out because the other two markets aren't at their highs. And now I realize that I have foreknowledge of what's going to happen here, but this is very, very common. That's why I'm using this as an example. I'm the first to tell you that, yeah, maybe a sustained move might take place here, and they may have run this market 7 ticks. But I know from experience that's pretty unlikely. Not to mention, if you look at the 10-year, you'll notice that there was a very big, heavy volume area right here from 3.5 to 2.5. It's just that 3-tick range that was maintaining for a large part of the morning. So when you have a high volume area like that, even if the market starts to press out of it, where you see it goes from 83,000 to 30,000, guys that are short in this area between 3.5 and 2.5, they don't need to puke out. They're heavy, heavy hitters. So yeah, even though the market may break a couple ticks against them and break the profile, they're not going to instantly puke out at 4.5 and 5. Those guys are going to probably try to defend their position all the way up to 6 and maybe even 7 or 8. So you're not going to get them puking out, which probably means you're not going to get medium-sized traders puking out either, guys who trade 50 to 100 to 200. So a lot of guys are going to hold tight, and the people who are going to move this will be shorter-term players who are long, and they're going to try and force the market up if they can. But again, you're going to run into resistance, even though you're breaking a step in the profile. So as you see this trade up, you'll notice there they finally start to break 13s, right? Now, you would have had the opportunity right there to buy 13 once you saw it print. So it's not that you couldn't make the call. It breaks the profile, goes bid 12, they start to trade 13s. You can actually hit it as it's going. So you could have hit 13s and been long right here. And right away you see them print into 14. There they buy 14. But 1,000 trades at 14, so it doesn't just drop right away. 1,000 trades and the offer maintains right there. They finally take 14's bid, 14's offer. And now you'll notice, which you can see in the 5-year, it's slightly covered up, they try to, they print 2,600 into the 5-year, and the 5-year maintains. And you're going to see this happen in the 10-year as well. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. If all three markets were at their highs, what you're going to look to see is they're going to take 14's, go bid, instantly hit 15's, go bid. They're going to take 5's bid, hit 5 halves, take them bid. It's not going to take 2,600 to drive the 5-year bid here. You want to see 1,000 trade there, and then right away they're going to print 5,600 into the next price. So right away you're going to see sellers stepping up to try and to defend their positions. And here you go again. I mean, the 5-year finally gets bid, but it takes 3,700 plus contracts to make that happen. They keep hitting 14's, but no one will take 15's. And here you can see, let me pause this for you. Over here you can also see, okay, so there's kind of a big step right there from 21,000 to 8,900. So naturally, guys will want to defend this step in the 5-year, people who are short, which I'm sure is why you saw over 4,000 offer out right there at 19.2. So even if you're long 13 at the standpoint, you have to understand you're not getting the same kind of follow-through that you would probably be getting if all three markets were breaking their highs. Therefore, you have to manage the trade in a different way, or avoid it altogether, which is what I did. I didn't want to take a shot at going long here because I was pretty sure we'd run into resistance somewhere in this area right above it. I didn't feel like it was the risk was justified in this particular area. So even if you are long at 13 here, you really can't let the trade come back on top of you at that point. I mean, if they don't make it go from here, then you're probably going to have to scratch the trade. Or at least that's the way that I would manage that trade in that scenario. And it's because the context is different. Let me fast forward through this a little bit so you can see what happens. And then right there you see him hit down. sell over 4,700, 4,800 into 5s. They're going to come back on 14s right here. Come back on 19.2. Right there. I actually tried to hit that as it went offer. Figured I wouldn't even get it. But the point here is that the market stops right here and then pulls right back into this range again. It takes some volume to make it happen, but it does pull back in. And so I jumped forward just to bypass all the movement. But basically what happened was the market does pull back into this range again, where you see 3.5, this heavy volume profile over here. And the 30-year pulled right back into 12.11. My read on that is basically it's due to the divergence. Even though the 30-year was trying to crack highs right there, it didn't get much follow through because you had too many sellers willing to step up in the 10-year and the 5-year at these levels, and so therefore trying to make a long trade right there is, like I said, not necessarily a bad idea, but you do have to micromanage it very carefully and realize that the divergence could cause the markets to not go up very far. And so to illustrate the opposite, if you'll simply go to the starter video titled As She Goes Trade, number 3, you'll see what I'm talking about. All three markets are approaching their highs together. The 30-year is actually a few ticks off here, 3-4 ticks off, but the 10-year is right at the high and the 5-year is right at the high. And it does take some time for this trade to play out, but when it does, it leads to a breakup in all three markets. It goes back and forth a little bit, and then it went on even farther. That's what I mean. Your likelihood of getting some follow-through increases greatly if all three markets are lined up. And so, even if you're not a treasury trader, you can use this concept no matter what products you trade. Just you have to take the big picture into consideration. So if you're trading the bund, bobble, shats, obviously it's better if the bund and the bobble are both somewhere near their highs and running together. If you're trading the Euro stocks alongside the DAX, same thing. I did a Eurex course last year, and you can see on those recordings where sometimes there was a divergence between the DAX and the Euro stocks, and when that happened, it was a little bit hard to tell what may take place. When they were both running together, they both ran together very well. So that's how you use that within the context of the situation. Okay, so now I want to run through some examples of the 4 types of action that I describe on the document here, going through starting with number 1, the game on. So the most obvious game on scenario is around a news release like unemployment. This was a day last year, unemployment day last year. And what you see, obviously the market thins out significantly at 8:29 a.m. Number comes out. Market goes haywire for a few minutes. And now I advocate not playing in the immediate knee-jerk reaction that comes after a news release. But when the volume does fill back in, there is opportunity quite often. And the reason there's opportunity is because everybody's there. It's like I say in the game on description, everybody's itching to play. People want to make money. They have things to do. So there's going to be movement. And this provides opportunity for you. Let this play out for just 1 second, and I'll show you what I mean here. So there it goes. Number comes out, kind of goes crazy. You can see the prints are taking place. The bids and the offers can't even keep up with where the actual prints are taking place. And I just don't like to be involved in these areas for the most part. It's just too much back and forth, too much craziness. And then right about here is where it's still a little bit crazy, but you can see finally things fill in a bit and there's some decent volume going off. And so now it can still move against you very fast, so you have to be on the ball when it comes to making trades in this type of action. But the volume comes back in. Right there, it whips around a little bit more. And then you have a little bit of opportunity to come in and maybe take advantage of a move somewhere once it slows down a little bit. And you still have to be very careful because obviously light volume can press the market a few ticks. So it's not necessarily ideal. Certainly not ideal for newer traders who don't know anything about it and who have never traded unemployment. But you're just waiting for some reasonable volume to come back into the market. Once it does, even just a few minutes in, fast forward a little bit here. So right here, you're only 5 minutes past the number, and you already have 3,600 on the offer by 1,100 bid. So now you have some real volume come back into the market, but yet you're still going to have action that takes place, and this is when you want to be involved. Particularly, too, because you get paid very fast, or you usually know you're wrong very fast during these time frames. So when you're on the right side, your risk is very minimal, and you can often get paid very well. So that's one game on scenario. Now this is the first trade on the intermediate video. And this is another example. I mean, we're going way back, but it's a good example of also a game on type scenario, because even though there's not a number coming out and there's no news release, you have some fluid volume taking place. And you're also near breaking points. The 5 years near the low, the 30 and the 10 are coming up on the low of the day. And so, going back to the X-Trader days, it's not real fast. It's obviously not like unemployment or a major number that comes out, but you have some order flow. There's markets, there are traders making moves, trying to press the market lower. There's probably buyers trying to defend the positions. Maybe a couple of guys are covering down here. They're not sure if it's going to break to lows or not, right? So you have order flow, and you know if you get involved and you're on the right side, you should be paid fairly well. There should be enough order flow to carry it on down a few ticks and hopefully defend your position. There they start to hit it as it goes lower. And as you see, it's not real continuous. There's some hesitancy in terms of sellers trying to take this down lower. You can see it over here in the 5 year. Even though the bids dropped away, no one's cranking it down just yet. But sometimes you have to have a little bit of patience in these scenarios. Still, it's a game on type scenario, not really a slow but methodical type scenario. I'll explain the difference here in a minute. And of course, I'm not going to go through this entire thing, but even there you can see it goes offer there at 28 and 1,000 trade, and the offer maintains in the 30 year. These offers maintain in the 10 and the 5. I went bid there. But they end up carrying it lower on pretty decent volume, and that's what you want to see. It doesn't have to be an extremely fast move, but some consistent buying and selling, and a move that moves are taking place fairly quickly or over the course of at least a few minutes. Again, an ideal scenario to be involved in making trades or looking for trades. Excuse me, and then of course the market traded on down, and I ended up exiting down here. But you can look at that on the intermediate video. The whole point was just to give you an idea. That's, again, game on type action in an area where you want to be involved. So if you bring up the starter video titled 5 Profile Breakout, I think this action is very representative of the slow, methodical type action I describe as the second type here on this document. What we basically saw was a market that was moving back and forth in a fairly heavy range. You see here there was a range around 12.5 from 47,000 pretty much all the way down to the bottom, and the market had been going back and forth in this area. But sellers had continually been able to hold the market under these prices. Same thing over here in the 30 area. You can see they were holding it pretty firm under 28, 27. And then over here in the 5-year around these levels. And you see it's 10:59 a.m., so it's 11 a.m. So the market appears to be a bit slow. It's not going off rapidly in either direction. There's not a continuous amount of orders being executed back and forth, but there is some action taking place, and this is one of those periods where if you're on your game and you're paying attention, you might get a clue that a move will eventually take place. Now, you're never quite sure if it will happen or not, and of course, a few things have to happen in order for a move to take place. It's not just sellers holding the market down here. What eventually has to happen is those sellers obviously have to press it on down towards the lows. Maybe some long traders don't hold tight here and they end up giving up. So maybe some guys that are long from this area right here, they notice that it's not going above these prices, so they go ahead and dump their long positions, and their selling will help carry the market lower as well, because those will be some long traders that aren't defending their positions. So there will be a few factors that come into play, but yet it's still kind of slow and methodical, and the sellers are doing a really good job of defending their positions. And if you can get the right price and not take too much risk, these kind of areas can lead to really good opportunity, as you see in this trade right here. So study this action and action similar to it to get an idea of what I mean by the slow and methodical. Just periods where you have markets that are in a range, they're kind of going back and forth. It doesn't appear to be any real rhyme or reason for it, but yet it's still early enough in the day that some kind of move might take place. And so you just have to be on your game and waiting to find that spot where you don't think it'll go too far in your face. And I discussed this too on the slow but methodical explanation in the beginning, part 1 of the context videos. You know, these are not trades where you're going to get in right away and go for the instant edge and hope the market breaks highs or lows. These are trades where if you do decide to step up, you know you're going to probably step up and have to take a little bit of heat. Watch it go back and forth a few times, at least at your price. Might go a tick in your, a tick against you, a tick for you, a tick against you, a tick for you. So you know going into these types of trades that you're probably going to have to ride it out and have a set stop loss that you'll have to adhere to. It's not going to be a trade you get in and then scratch. But they can pay off very well if the move finally comes, because it's taken so long for the move to occur. So if it takes a long time for the move to occur, then most likely you're going to have a lot of guys stacked up on that side, and probably quite a few guys stacked up on the opposite side. So if those guys that are stacked up on the wrong side begin losing, their puking out is going to help create the move that you're looking for. And so it can extend the move quite a bit. So good action can show some opportunity or lead to some opportunity, and also the type of action where you want to be involved and looking for a potential trade. Okay, so now we come to the third type of action I described, the suck you in or the trap you type action. And basically what I mean by this is there might be volume trading back and forth. You might see some size going off, but you don't have a really good reason for firing, and you have to keep in mind who's really playing the game at this point. Will there be new money coming in? Will there be people puking out? Is there something that can create follow-through on the move? The first thing you want to look at, for example, in this recording, I managed to capture this, was time of day. 2:47 p.m. We're 13 minutes off the close. Now, I realize a lot of people are saying, well, I'm done by 2:47 p.m. I wouldn't be there. And that's great if you are that kind of person already. But I know a lot of guys, even in the prop firm, who would sit around all day long to the close. And 13 minutes before the close, they'd be sitting there looking to see if they couldn't scalp out one tick here and one tick there and try and make some money. And it's like it didn't really occur to them what was happening and how different the action is going to be at this point. At this time of the day, you have to realize it's predominantly only heavy hitters. There are a few heavy hitters sitting here. They're doing their thing. Anybody who is a small trader to even some large traders are going to be gone from the morning if they're up money. You know, guys who made money early in the morning, going to be gone. Banks and institutions, there'll be a lot of them also not going to be doing much of anything. They're already done. They did what they needed to do. So you'll have a few guys that are still market makers, working orders, doing a few things here and there. But you're probably not going to see the kind of follow through you want to see. Plus, you don't really have any kind of defined way of spotting a risk parameter or defining a proper exit strategy, because you have to know going into this that even if the market breaks a profile, step in the profile, for example, right here from 22.5 to 22, you have a pretty decent step from 58,000 to 26,000. If you're long down here, even if it breaks at 22, you would normally think, well, I need to puke at 22 or 21.5. But at this time of the day, in this kind of action, you may puke right into 21.5 and it comes right back into 23.5. You know, it's just a very common thing that you'll see in those scenarios. So you can't really identify your risk very well. You're probably not going to have a lot of follow through that takes place. But yet there's some movement. So let me show you what I mean. What we see here is the market, some buyers kind of support right here at 24 and 24.5, and then they sweep this market for no apparent reason. And when I say no apparent reason, what I mean is you're not running highs, you're not running lows, you're not breaking a step in the profile. It's just guys doing something that they need to do, and some HFT and programs trying to jump on board real fast and ride the move. But as a trader who's trying to pick your spots and identify the proper context for firing, you have to have the discipline to stay out of these areas, usually. What ends up happening here is they start to buy all three markets, the 10, the 30, and the 5. Right there, they buy them. And by the way, as a side note, if you were watching the S&P, notice again, as these make their move, the S&P doesn't do much of anything. It's a 2 lot, 1 lot, 3 lot, 1 lot, you know, and then it'll go bid or offer, and then nothing will happen. So whenever you realize there's not a continuous flow of volume, and it's a bad time of day and nothing's happening, and by the way, sometimes you can see this at 11 a.m. or 10:30 a.m. Sometimes the markets just die early in the day. But this is the kind of action where you just don't want to be involved. So you see these three markets, they're going to go up. So now see right here, they're going to take 25 fives in a 10-year. Goes bid real fast. Pretty strong bid. And they're going to go for 26s right here. Now, this is sort of my point. Newer traders don't often understand this, and they don't realize it, be it 2:49 p.m. or 11 a.m. What they're looking at is, okay, well, they supported 24.5. They just bought 25s, hit 25.5s, took it strong bid. Man, maybe I should be buying 26s here. They're obviously driving the market up. In this area, again, asking yourself who's going to hit the next price, there's no real rhyme or reason for what's taking place here. Basically, somebody has to do something somewhere in the world, so they're buying right here. But like I said, lots of people are already gone, so you can't really buy 26s looking for the market to crack the profile level and go to the highs again, like you might do around 10 a.m. Or 9:30 a.m. or whatever, you know. In this scenario, you're pretty much at the whim of a few guys that can easily push the market one way or the other. Conversely, let's say you wanted to step up thinking, okay, well, someone will defend 27s right here. Now, as it turns out, the market does stop up here, but the problem is, if the market gets to 27 and you sell it, it can easily pop right to 28, 28 half. Because, again, the people who were defending 27 and 26 half earlier in the day and selling those prices heavy, a lot of those guys are probably gone. So the amount of selling that you had taking place at 27 half and at 27 and 26 half earlier in the day, that was due to the people that were there then, those sellers. Just because those sellers were there then at 10, 11 noon doesn't mean they're going to be there again at 3 p.m. You know, most likely they won't be there again at 3 p.m. So it's basically just kind of a crapshoot, no matter how you look at it. And what can happen is, even when it's not this late in the day, you might see action like this at some other point in the day, and you get caught up in wanting to be involved because you just watched it go 24 half, 25, 25 5, and that's 2 or 3 ticks you didn't make. But there's going to be, you know, with experience, what's going to happen is you're almost going to have like the Spidey sense. If you've ever watched, you know, Amazing Spider-Man, you have this tingling that tells you, I don't need to be involved here. And whenever you have that, you need to listen to it, because it'll keep you out of situations where it's very easy to be whipsawed around. You can end up buying 26, it drops back to 24 half, 24, then you blow out 24, then it comes back to 25 5. You know, so then you try to sell 26 or 26 half, and then it goes through you to 27 half, 28, and then you blow out, you know, and then it comes back to 26 again. They're dangerous spots. You don't have all 3 factors working for you. Most likely you're not going to have, the guys who are buying here aren't making a run for the highs. You're not going to have new money trying to jump on board. You're not going to have people puking out. Anyone who's short in this area, they're taking it overnight, most likely. You know, it's already 3 p.m. They're committed. They're not going to bail out, so you're not going to have that money pressing the market higher. You just don't have the factors working in your favor. And so, to run you through this just real fast, what happens is they end up buying 26s there. You can see them hitting it. There they take 26 half. I'll let it play out for a second. And of course, looking at that, now you would have been going, well, I should have bought 26s, because now it's 26 half bid. When they fall back on 26 half, .26 half bid again. And see, in addition, you don't really have size to lean on anywhere. You may see a bid of 3,300 right here and think you have that to lean on, and only 600 of that is real. Some guy can pump up this order really fast, pull it, sell 600. It's just a common thing that you see in these types of areas. So you're not going to have real orders for 2, 3, 4,000. I mean, you see, yeah, well, they traded there, but it's hard to read ahead of time. So I don't know if that 1,600 is going to drop away to 800, or if it will maintain, or if it will refresh. It's just really hard to get a read on that type of action in these types of scenarios. So did you see that? Only 904 traded there, not even 800 traded there. I'll back that up for you so you can see what I'm talking about. So as they pump up this bid at 26 half, okay, so here it is. So you have a bid of 3,232 contracts. Currently, only 107 have traded back into 26 half since it's gone bid, right? 3,232 bid. Now watch what happens when it actually goes offer. When they sell it and it goes offer, that's only going to go up to 900. There's 3,300 bid. See that? Only 800 contracts trade. So 2,500 contracts were stacked on top that weren't real. All those pull off, and most likely the guy who was stacking up 2,500 on top is this guy who just sold 800 more right there. He pulls his order and then hits whatever's left and sells another 800, takes an offer. That's so easy to do in these types of areas because they know their risk is very, very limited. It's just too easy to push the market around. See, that guy is going to be less inclined to do that when the market's really busy and he knows he could get run over. If he throws that 2,500 bid up there at 9:30 a.m. trying to spoof the market, he knows he might get hit on that, and he doesn't want to be long 2,500. He wants to be short. So we do see spoofs throughout the day, all day long, for sure, but it's a lot easier for him to get away with it when it's slow like this, you know. So you don't know if you have any real size to lean on anywhere. And as it turns out, the market ends up stopping up here, and then I'm going to fast forward, going all the way back down. Pulls all the way back into 24.5. So, you know, it stops. So again, if you're trying to buy 26s as it's going to 26.5, as they bid it up real fast, you run into a wall. Trying to sell it there would have worked in this particular situation, but again, it could have just as easily gone bid 27, bid 27.5, and you had been blown out at 28s. Just no real reason to be involved. And so now we come to the last kind of action, which is basically just game over. This is pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, if the market's stuck in a 2 or 3 tick range and you can't make heads nor tails of it, and there's just a lot of volume trading or no volume trading, you might as well call it and turn off the computer. You'll usually see this around the end of the day or into the afternoons when nothing's really happening. It happens quite frequently on unemployment days in the afternoon because people come in on a Friday, unemployment number comes out, and everything's done before noon, and everybody leaves. And then it's game over. You can also see it like the morning before FOMC usually. The day the FOMC number's coming out or FOMC statement's coming out, no one wants to do anything because there's no reason to commit to a position before the FOMC statement is released. So you come in that morning, nothing will happen all morning. The market will just flatline all day long. You might as well not even be there. And you can see that pretty much any time that you get heavy buildups and ranges that nothing's happening. And so to cap the video off, just remember, always ask yourself the question, who's going to hit the next price? If you get in at this point, what's the likely scenario based on what you know about how everybody plays the game? Is it morning? Is it noon? Is it afternoon? Is it after a news? Is there no news? Is this a point where guys have to puke out? Is this a point where no one has to puke out? Etc., etc. And you'll find that that should help you drastically improve your entries because you will be staying out of all of the chop and staying out of areas which don't offer very good risk-reward scenarios, and they don't offer a way for you to know that you're wrong. It's very hard to identify your risk point, like I said earlier. It's an easy place for people to do spoofs, you know, so you can never know if the volume is real or not real. Identifying those areas and knowing when to stay out will help your bottom line tremendously.